Hi everyone, welcome to Outgrow's seasonal webinar. This time we are going to talk about how you and your business can adapt to the changing needs of a post-pandemic world, and especially a world that is seeing a rapid economic boom across the board. Now, before I continue, I want everyone who has registered for the webinar to know that you can claim a special 1-month extended trial of Outgrow, which you can use to make funnels, quizzes, calculators, contests, chatbots, forms, tests, and e-commerce recommendations. There are more than 1,000 templates available at the outgrow.co website that you can easily adapt for your business during this trial period. But anyway, coming back to the point at hand, post-pandemic shifts in customer preferences are expected to be significant. The Economist and the Wall Street Journal both predict that a historic economic boom is just around the corner. New business formation is surging across the world as entrepreneurs seek to fill gaps in the market. Growth and marketing strategies during this period will therefore need significant changes, if not a complete overhaul. We're going to have 5 panels to explore this topic. The first panel is with Yelp and Freshworks and is about how customer engagement has been revolutionized in the post-pandemic world. The second panel is with Rand Fishkin and Ontraport and is about revised marketing and advertising strategies for the post-pandemic economic boom. The third panel is with Alibaba and Zoho and is about small and medium business tactics for the post-pandemic economic boom. The fourth panel is with Zapier and Aweber and is about automation and growth hacks in the post-pandemic economic boom. And finally, the fifth panel is with Unbounce and ConnectWell and is about landing page and interactive engagement in the post-pandemic economic boom. Welcome to Panel B. We are here with Rand Fishkin, co-founder and CEO of audience research startup SparkToro, and Brendan Dubbels, business development director at Ontraport. And they're going to talk about revised marketing and advertising strategies for the post-pandemic economic boom. So without further ado, let's go on to the rapid fire round. Texting or talking?
Texting.
Talking.
Your personal marketing mantra.
Don't sell anything. Earn the awareness and trust of those who might buy, and you will do great marketing.
It's short, it's sweet, but be specific.
Favorite day of the week?
I think I like Friday. Friday the best. I get a good balance of fun and some work.
Monday. Love feeling refreshed and just hopping into calls.
Scale of 1 to 10, how good of a driver are you?
I'm a very statistically safe driver, but that probably makes me relatively conservative. So somewhere between a 7 and an 8.
I think I'm a 10. If you asked my girlfriend, she'd probably give me a 3 or a 4.
2022's biggest marketing trend.
Typically, it's probably going to be something to do with selling conspiracy theories to the vulnerable populations of the world.
Absolutely going to be privacy and the kind of death of cross-site tracking.
Name one of the 7 dwarves.
Sleepy?
Sleepy, for whatever reason, I thought he was hilarious as a kid.
How many cups of coffee do you drink per day?
Only one, but it's a big one.
I drink 4 to 5. I actually run a coffee roastery on the side, so it's just constant around here.
What's something you could eat for a week straight?
I feel like cacio e pepe.
Cheese. Any type of cheese except for Swiss.
Questions for Rand. What's a marketing flywheel and why do businesses need one?
So I don't see marketing flywheels and marketing funnels as being in opposition with each other or replacing one another. I see them in tandem. So the marketing funnel is essentially looking at how do people reach your website or the place where they convert, the place where they buy from you. That could be a physical store or it could be somebody else's web property. And what does that journey and path look like? And a marketing flywheel is more, how do you build your growth engine? What things do you invest in repeatedly over and over again in order to earn attention and awareness and trust, move people through your funnel, get them to convert, get them to recommend your product, your company to their networks. I don't see these in opposition at all. I don't know that it's going to change much because of or in relation to the pandemic itself. I think that fundamentally the flywheel is a concept that's existed for a long time. I think there are folks who have been more significantly investing in digital marketing because of how the pandemic changed offline behavior, and those folks are going to continue to invest long after. So, the pandemic certainly accelerated investment in digital marketing flywheels and digital marketing investments. I think we're going to see that continue for the long term, just because there's so much available business and profit to be had in that world, that even folks who, start to recover in IRL, right, in real life, are not going to stop investing in digital. It's possible, but my guess is that those are still overinvested in relative to the return that they provide. And so my suspicion is that overall, we are not going to see a return to whatever you want to call it, offline advertising and real world advertising and marketing investments. Digital attention is still so relatively underinvested that I think you'll keep seeing dollars moving there. There's still a ton of advertising dollars that very, very clearly at the macro level are being wasted in, whatever you want to call it, TV, radio, print, out of home, outdoor. I don't think those channels are gonna rebound. I think they might stop their slide, stop falling off a cliff as much as they have the last 18 months. Maybe they'll plateau a little more, but I don't see them coming back.
Why do you dislike, reject growth hacking as a practice, and what marketing methodologies do you prefer?
I dislike the term growth hacking, but I also dislike a lot of the thinking behind it, right? Because essentially the idea with growth hacking has been that you find some short-term exploitable hack, right? Which is where the term growth hacking comes from. This hack that you can repeat over and over until it loses effectiveness. It is usually somewhere on the borderline of unethical and or borderline of not fully legal, or it's violating someone's terms of service or violating privacy. And there have been examples of growth hacks that have been relatively effective for a small number of companies, but almost always the trend that you see is a growth hack, a new one or an old one, works reasonably well, has whatever high open rates if it's an email, or high engagement rates if it's a social media hack, or high rankings if it's an SEO hack, whatever the case might be, for a short period of time, and then the efficacy falls dramatically, usually to a point where it's no longer worth doing. And my sense is this is not nearly as sustainable or investment worthy as something that takes a long time to build up, but as you build up its strength, it produces better and better ongoing results for the long term, which is essentially the inverse of growth hacking, right? It's long-term marketing fundamentals, building a flywheel, a growth engine, as opposed to a growth hack. So that's what I prefer. Fundamentally, it comes from the very top of the economic pie, right? So essentially, once you have the 1980s and the shift in capital gains tax rate being much lower than ordinary income tax rates, you start to get classes of investors, which included eventually private equity and venture capital, You could see that by the 90s and the early 2000s, that all of these asset classes prefer hyper growth for a few companies, and the overwhelming majority of companies sort of chasing hyper growth but dying trying. And so you get this mentality of let's look for short-term hacks that get us the maximum growth rate, because we need to be able to raise our next round to survive, because we never get to profitability, or we get there only after 15 or 20 years if we're Amazon, or many, many years if we're a venture-backed company. Even extraordinary, right? Public companies like a HubSpot, right? Still losing money every quarter, but they're propped up by investors who want growth over profitability, with the expectation that someday in the long-term future, like a Microsoft or an Amazon, they'll eventually be profitable. But all these folks prefer growth. And when your preference is for growth rather than profitability or survivability, you get an incentive for growth hacking so that you can raise your next round in 18 months, make your investors and your board happy. Only if the incentives change, right? So by incentives changing, I mean, there is a proposal from the Biden administration, the new American administration, to make capital gains and ordinary income tax rates the same. If that happens, then yes, I think you will see, over the following decade, a complete shift in how companies and individuals prioritize growth versus profitability. And you'll see a lot more people thinking long-term versus short-term.
Which marketing channels do you feel are the highest opportunity and lowest barrier to entry right now for early stage organizations?
Early stage, you're probably looking at one of 4 channels. That is product-led, meaning you make investments in a product that is free or very close to free to access and try and use, and it attracts a lot of word of mouth and network attention because of the value that it provides for free. I think that's one. The second one is what I'd call either marketing through sources of influence, or essentially an evolved version of digital PR, digital public relations, meaning finding all the sources of attention that reach your audience already and doing marketing of all kinds through them. That could be direct sponsorship and advertising. It could be co-marketing. It could be we do an interview together. It could be a webinar. It could be an event. All types of things. But that's number 2. The third one, I think, is content marketing, which still has a tremendous amount of investment opportunity for a lot of folks. My suspicion is that episodic content marketing is the most underutilized and most valuable of those, meaning you continue to put out series, sort of like a Netflix series, a podcast series, a blog series, something where people can find one and then they go back and check out a back catalog. And then the fourth and final one that I think is still a good opportunity for many early stage businesses is social media marketing, meaning you find social channels, whatever that is. Could be Reddit or YouTube or Twitter or LinkedIn or Instagram or TikTok or Facebook, and you invest in the communities that already exist in those places. The one I'm excluding intentionally are things like display and programmatic advertising, which is just very, very expensive and competitive for an early stage business. SEO, which again, very expensive and competitive for an early stage business in almost every sector. There's just too much competition for you to be able to win in the early stages without massive, massive investment. And 3 is search, paid search marketing, which again, super expensive. Yeah, I think you have to, with social media marketing or any of these, I mean, content marketing, this is true, PR, this is true, you are going to have to be very creative and quite competitive to be able to stand out. But the opportunity still exists, right? On Facebook, it's probably less posts on your business page and probably more engagement with groups. On LinkedIn, you can still do really well with posts on your page for B2B marketing, especially if you use some of their native embedded video content stuff, and that is very compelling. You can still do very well on places like Twitter and LinkedIn and Instagram and TikTok with both content and with direct one-to-one connections, right, and networking connections through those platforms. So you just have to be willing to make those more creative investments, and most businesses are not going to do it well. The bar is pretty high, but that means that for those who are good at it, the opportunity is there. The answer is it depends. Sometimes that works better, sometimes not as well. Certainly, for example, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, doesn't matter much whether it's a company account or an individual account. They can do equally well. Facebook, maybe, it's right on the border with an individual versus a company. LinkedIn, I think my sense is it does better as an individual, but the stats can be all over the place. So it really depends. And it depends what kind of marketing you're doing. Putting up a public post, a tweet or a link or whatever it is on your social profile is not the only way to earn attention on a social network, right? There's lots of ways to participate in communities, or to comment on other people's stuff, or to follow them and network with them, or to participate in groups, or build lists, or a whole bunch of other stuff. So I don't want to suggest that the post is the only thing you're doing on a social platform.
What's influence marketing, and what is the distinction between that set of tactics and influencer marketing or public relations?
Sure. So the fundamental definition of influence marketing, at least as I envision it, is find all the sources of influence that already reach your audience: publications, podcasts, events, conferences, webinars, YouTube channels, individual social profiles, whatever it is, groups, and then go do marketing in those places, right? Meaning you find the tactic that works to get this publication to write about you, or this social account that's well followed to share your content or talk about you, or this podcast to have you on as a guest, or to have another guest on who happens to talk about you. Do a webinar with this event, do an in real life meetup with this conference. All of those are influence marketing. You found a source that already reaches your audience, and you go find a way to do marketing with them. Influencer marketing, for better or for worse, the reason that I don't use that term anymore, the one with the R at the end, is because influencer has come to mean half naked guy with six-pack abs who poses on beaches around the world, and you pay him $500 to pose with your product and endorse it. That's a very, very narrow definition of one kind of, influence, and I don't think it's right for 99.9% of companies. There's a small number of B2C businesses that can still do well with that influencer marketing stuff. And then public relations is so broad that it essentially means sort of controlling or influencing your company's reputation, generally speaking, in the mainstream press through relationships with journalists and publications. Again, doesn't quite get at what we're talking about with influence marketing, hence the distinction between the three of them. Influencer marketing has been affected in interesting ways, right? Because a lot of the travel and in real life opportunities have become more difficult. That being said, a lot of people who call themselves influencers have sort of pretended the pandemic didn't exist and just made do. And that's a testament to their business models and their willingness to be flexible. I don't see public relations shifting all that much. I think that there was a lot of activity during the pandemic around public relations sort of changing their approach to relationships with media and press and businesses, and also feeling like the attention economy was very focused on news and media, and so there was more opportunity there. That may drop off just a little bit as we get back to, I don't know if we're in a post-pandemic. We probably are not, with the Delta variant, at least in the United States, for the foreseeable future. But I think that influence marketing is one of those where it's always existed. It's just never had a name. And I think it will continue to earn investment, probably some increased level of investment, because there's more, there's a growing sense of awareness of this channel and opportunity.
Ontraport. Through the pandemic, we have seen a sharp rise in ad costs on Facebook. How can businesses compete in such an environment?
It's true, ad costs have risen quite a bit for companies that haven't adopted the Facebook conversion API. And the reason for that is Apple came out and now decided that they're no longer going to allow companies like Facebook and Google to track their users across different sites. And so that may not seem like a big deal, but if Facebook isn't able to see behavior across all of the sites with a tracking pixel, they're not able to build up a customer profile with all of those data points. And so that means when you're running ads, they're no longer going to be able to positively identify people that are most likely to buy or click on your ad. And so if they're not able to build those profiles based on all those different site visits, that means they're just going to be making a shot in the dark when they're giving you traffic, right? They don't know what the ideal buyer for you looks like. And so your conversion rate is going to decrease. Meanwhile, they're going to have to show you more and more and more people to try and get you that conversion with no guarantee of ROI. And so that means that you're looking at paying more and making way less. Thankfully, there is a solution, but the problem is only going to get worse because we assume Google will be next on board, as will Firefox, and on down the way, because privacy is a major, major concern. And I can guarantee you it'll be one of the hottest topics in marketing in 2022.
Where will they be 6 months from now?
No doubt 6 months from now, ad costs are going to continue to rise as we see more companies opt out of that cookie tracking across sites. Facebook is going to be guessing even more. Thankfully, again, there is a solution, which I'll cover coming up shortly.
How can ad buyers avoid paying such a high premium and still get results?
I mentioned previously the reason things are getting so expensive is because Facebook can no longer track iOS users and see their full journey from site to site to site. So I could buy something from site 1, and then after I do that, I might visit site 2, site 3, site 4, and Facebook is able to take all of those data points and create an opinion of me and how likely I am to click on specific ads because it knows all of my web behavior. Now iOS says no more, and so Facebook is going to be serving you up a bunch of pretty much random leads that they think might buy. So the way you can combat this is you can use what's called Facebook Conversion API. And so you gather up all of the data from your site, and you can actually submit data to Facebook based on every step of your pipeline. And so maybe you give demos. You can submit data to Facebook and say, hey, this was a demo. Hey, this one was a purchase. Oh, hey, this one was an ebook download or whatever. And then you're able to actually value each of those conversions. Facebook is then able to take all of these visitors that you've identified and use that data to help identify other similar buyers, because otherwise they're just anonymous visitors to them and they're not able to take that data and feed you those right leads that are going to click on your ads. Thankfully, there is a way to use the API that doesn't require a team of developers. We spent a lot of time developing it, and so we actually have a webinar And we'll show you how exactly to set this up, both with a system like Ontraport to make it very, very easy, or how you can do it manually sort of on your own. Either way, definitely something you need to get set up. And we're actually hosting this webinar totally opt-in free. It's been recorded. It's probably about 45 minutes. So we'd love for you to check it out, and definitely make this a high item on your to-do list to make sure that you're not overpaying for your leads and you are staying competitive in the marketing landscape.